Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Super Gaming Minute, the channel dedicated to all things Nintendo and gaming. Today we have another massive leak when it comes to Breath of the Wild 2. There is a lot I want to go over, so let's get this intro over as quickly as possible so we can get right into this video. But before we get started, do not forget to hit that like button if you guys are excited for Breath of the Wild 2, share the video with a friend who's also excited for the game, and of course, the most important thing you can do to help the channel grow would be to subscribe to Super Gaming Minute if you like talking all things Nintendo and gaming. With all that said, let's get right into the video. Alright, so as we know guys, we are dealing with rumors here, which means some of it may be true, but a lot of it can also be made up. So take everything I say here with a grain of salt. The stuff we're about to go through comes from an article over on 4chan, and as mentioned, I have no idea if it's real or fake, but it's just so interesting that I just had to share it with all of you and to get your thoughts and if you believe any of these stories and gameplay elements can be true or not. So please don't forget to sound off your thoughts and opinions on these leaks down in the comment section below. I for one not only believe that at least part of these can be true, I also hope that it is true because it sounds like my dream Zelda game. Alright, so as we're all aware, this is the sequel to the original Breath of the Wild, with all of the original incarnations from the first game making a second appearance. So they have to give some sort of explanation as to why the game is kind of being reset, right? For instance, why doesn't Link have his Master Sword to start the game off in this new version of Breath of the Wild? Well, the leak is stating that Link returned the Master Sword back to the Korok Forest, which is now floating in the sky. It makes a lot of sense that he would return the sword once he finished his main quest in the first Breath of the Wild. The leak is claiming that the game will have the same difficulty as the previous Breath of the Wild. It won't be harder and it won't be easier. And this is good. The difficulty for Breath of the Wild I think was about perfect. Not too hard, not too easy, and the game flowed really well. Hopefully though, they end up doing another master mode, or I can't remember what it was called, in order to play the game at a harder difficulty just like before. Now this next part I know for sure will get Zelda fans really excited. They're saying that more traditional dungeons as well as a replacement for shrines, which will be even older ruins, will be located all over the world. And this is probably the best news and will most likely have the majority of fans pretty excited. Now, us as Zelda fans have enjoyed the open sandbox style that is Breath of the Wild, but the majority of us, myself included, were a little disappointed when they threw away the old ways of designing the dungeons in the game. Now that's not to say that I didn't appreciate the hundreds of mini dungeons in the way of shrines wasn't fun, but what is Zelda without traditional style dungeons? Yes, we had the 4 beasts that we could traverse inside, but it never really felt like a traditional Zelda dungeon. I do however love the idea of blending the old with the new. Having a bunch of traditional Zelda style dungeons mixed in with the new shrine style dungeons will be a lot of fun and can help add a little more depth to the game. Next up, the setting for the game will be a lot like the first game, just a lot more dramatic. Okay, great. The way that they threw us right into the action after completing a small tutorial was fantastic, and I'm absolutely down for that again. And if the opening trailer gets us pumped up for our adventure with an exciting dramatic opening sequence, then yes, please, bring it on. The next thing to note is that there won't be a huge difference in enemies, and they'll mostly be the same that we saw in the first Breath of the Wild, with some, quote, evolutions. They also state the music is still simple but sounds out of tune, whatever that means. Next up, new underground enemies that can play around with time mechanics. It sounds as though Link is the only one who's able to turn back time. Sorry, I had to. Items have the same durability, but there are some enemies that have a time reversal mechanic that ends up with your weapons healing each time you strike them. This is a pretty cool idea, and I really like that this is a thing. When it came to the first Breath of the Wild, there were weapons that I straight up refused to use most of the time because I just didn't want to break them, because I didn't know where and when I'll be able to pick another one up. Now though, once we notice that a weapon is close to breaking, we can put it in our bag, wait until we find an enemy that can heal our weapon, beat the hell out of him with it, heal our weapons, good as new. The next big claim is that the plot revolves around time manipulation and another dimension. Now, does this mean that we'll be going between Hyrule and a different dimension, say like Lorule from Link Between Worlds? Well, keep watching because there's more on this later on in the video. Next up, Link's new green arm is a motif for courage. The arm is the last power from the sage that gives you new mechanics. So yeah, this is pretty well known at this point. The very first trailer we've seen for the game shows the green arm holding back someone in the underground, and we knew that it was linked to, well, Link somehow. Now this next point is very exciting. I'm sure a lot of Zelda fans are happy to finally have this mechanic in a Zelda game. After all, the game is named after her, but we've never before really got to be her in a mainline game. Zelda will play a role in a character swap mechanic. She's in another dimension and you have to switch between characters for puzzles to influence the regular Hyrule overworld and vice versa. Lots of teamwork between Link and Zelda. Okay, so there we have it. It looks as though Link and Zelda will each be playing their own parts in different dimensions, helping each other solve puzzles. It's going to be interesting to see how they will be interacting with each other throughout the game and what powers each will bring to the table. Now that being said, the article continues by saying that Zelda will have the Sheikah Slate. No real combat from what is played, mostly stealth and puzzle solving from Zelda. No gear, inventory is just material and quests. Now this is the interesting part. They're claiming that Link only uses the new powers from the sages, while Zelda uses the Slate features from Breath of the Wild 1, which this makes perfect sense, right? If memory serves me correctly, isn't it Zelda's Sheikah Slate in the first place? So this would imply that she would be using all of the original runes from the first entry of Breath of the Wild in order to solve puzzles in the alternate dimension. Or actually, if she's not fighting enemies, would she be in the original Hyrule that took place in the first Breath of the Wild, since we've already destroyed all the enemies in that dimension and time setting during the first game? I guess we'll have to find out. Next up, lots of Ocarina of Time references, which is great, paying homage to one of the most important games in history. Maybe this will even help us figure out once and for all which timeline Breath of the Wild falls under. A couple more things to note is that it will have a more surrealist tone. Quote, kill the past story about champions taking place as new sages in a more traditional Zelda Ganon plot. They claim a total of 6 traditional dungeons, which is 2 more than the original Breath of the Wild if you do count the beasts as traditional dungeons. The story takes place immediately after the first Breath of the Wild, which I hope they incorporate the end scene of Breath of the Wild 1 into the beginning of the opening story in Breath of the Wild 2. Now they go on to say that they never actually saw Ganon, but from what this person could tell, he is the undead form of Ganon, and he is invincible, having Link and Zelda working as a team in order to restore Ganon to his physical prime form in order to be able to injure him. The last thing to note here is, when asked to list 3 things that weren't in the trailers, he replies, there's land mola that are like the size of 2 horses that burrow between skylands, double sword weapons, and a power that both slows time and speeds up Link. Oh man. Okay, there's a lot to unpack from these supposed leaks and a lot of information to go over and criticize. I can see a lot of truth in these supposed leaks, and I hope that a lot of them, if not all of them, come true. I'll leave the original 4chan article in the description box for you guys to take a look at your own time. Guys, as you probably know by now, the Zelda franchise is one of my most beloved franchises of all time, so being able to talk anything about this game is extremely exciting. I hope for Nintendo's sake that they do release this game in 2022. We've waited long enough. Alright guys, and that is it. Now, what do you think of these supposed leaks? Do you believe that any or all of these could be true? Or do you think that it's just someone trying to gain clout? Comment your thoughts down below and let's start a conversation. I for one am absolutely hoping that they bring back traditional dungeons, all the while leaving in the new shrines. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Do not forget to give this video a like if you learned something today, or if you just want to be a nice person and help the channel grow, that would be great. But the most important thing you guys can do to help this channel grow would be to subscribe to Super Gaming Minute if you like talking all things Nintendo and gaming. We release 1 to 2 new videos every single week, and the only way to stay up to date with each and every video that we release would be to subscribe and to ring the notification bell. And as always, keep on gaming.